world of outlaw motorcycle clubs, few names carry the weight and notoriety of the Hells Angels M.C. Established in 1948, this international brotherhood has received hate and admiration alike. While the majority of Hells Angels are law-abiding, there are some who live out their lust for power and violence without regard for others. Today we delve into the dark underbelly of the Hells Angels to explore the top 10 most dangerous and notorious members. Number 10. Alan Pizarro, a Hells Angels member, and Meredith Hunter, a young man, met at the 1969 Altamont Free concert. Hunter, armed with a revolver, stood out in the peace and music celebration. The Hells Angels were hired to maintain order, their motorcycles forming a barrier against the crowd. In exchange for $500 worth of beer, they were tasked with ensuring safety. As tensions escalated, fueled by alcohol and restlessness, chaos unfolded. Beer cans were thrown and an unsettling tension hung in the air. When the Rolling Stones finally took the stage, the atmosphere was charged. Mick Jagger urged calm, but within moments, turmoil erupted. Amidst the commotion, Hunter climbed onto a speaker box, attracting the attention of two Hells Angels. A scuffle ensued, with one angel chasing Hunter into the crowd. However, driven by anger and intoxication, Hunter returned to the stage area. Witness accounts varied, some describing him as enraged, others as visibly upset. In a chilling moment captured on film, Hunter brandished his revolver, unclear whether a shot was fired. Pizarro, armed with a knife, swiftly approached, parrying the gun and stabbing Hunter. Other angels joined in, assaulting Hunter on the ground. Tragically, Hunter lost his life. Pizarro faced murder charges, but was ultimately acquitted on grounds of self-defense. The jury deliberated for 12.5 hours, examining the concert footage. The incident was eternally linked to Pizarro through the documentary, Gimme Shelter. Unaware of the fatal altercation, the Rolling Stones later learned about it and expressed sorrow. Mick Jagger watched the raw footage, grieving the loss of life. Pizarro's own story took another tragic turn years later when he drowned under suspicious circumstances. Questions remained unanswered, but his burial marked the end of a turbulent life. Pizarro achieved worldwide notoriety for his role in the Altamont tragedy, even though he was acquitted after all. The next Hells Angels member, however, is far from innocent. Number 9. James Ezekiel Brandis, aka Jim, rose to prominence as a feared enforcer in the Hells Angels Oakland chapter. Engaged in drug trafficking, organized crime, and violence, Brandis became an influential figure within the Brotherhood. Sent to Australia to carry out a hit on policemen, Brandis's true intentions were uncovered when incriminating items were found in his luggage. Denied entry, he was sent back home. Internal tensions within the Hells Angels led Brandis to believe that a member named Henry Crabtree had become an informant. In response, Brandis placed a contract on Crabtree's life. When the Aryan Brotherhood tried to collect the bounty, Crabtree cooperated with the police. Brandis faced murder and racketeering charges, but multiple mistrials left his guilt in question. The case divided the public, questioning the justice system's reliability. When fate caught up with Brandis, he was then successfully charged with murder and confined in prison. He spiraled into despair and ultimately took his own life in 1994. His tumultuous journey left a lasting impact on the criminal underworld, shrouding his enigmatic figure in mystery. Number 8. Khadir Padir, born in Turkey on November 26, 1982, chose a life of crime instead of seizing opportunities in prosperous Germany. He gained notoriety as the leader of the Hells Angels Berlin City during a violent biker war that led to the infamous Berlin Hells Angels trial in 2010. Padir faced charges including murder, stemming from a conflict with rival gang Bandidos. His target, Tahir Özbek, intended to collaborate with the rivals, provoking Padir and the Hells Angels. The tensions escalated, leading Padir to make a fatal decision. Surveillance footage captured the chilling moment when 13 bikers, including Padir, executed the violent act, resulting in Özbek's death. The court dismissed claims of self-defense, concluding that Özbek posed no threat. Padir's influence and leadership were deemed significant in orchestrating the crime, even if he didn't physically pull the trigger. He fostered a culture of brutality and manipulation within the Hells Angels. Currently serving a life sentence, Padir continues to exert influence over the gang through a mobile phone from behind bars. Number 7. Paul Eichide. In 2003, successful stockbroker Paul Eichide found himself indicted on charges of drug trafficking, kidnapping, and murder. Despite being placed under house arrest, Eichide removed his monitoring device and vanished, becoming one of the most wanted fugitives in the U.S. In 2007, he was elevated to the notorious 15 Most Wanted list by the U.S. Marshals, intensifying the hunt for his capture. Eichide led a double life as a stockbroker and a full member of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. Court records reveal his involvement in a violent incident with Cynthia Garcia, who criticized criminal activities at the Hells Angels clubhouse. Eichide and a fellow Hells Angel assaulted Garcia, stomping her until she lost consciousness. They then kidnapped her, drove her to a remote desert location, and brutally took her life. After 17 years on the run, Eichide was finally captured in 2018 in Buenos Aires, marking the culmination of a massive international operation involving Interpol, U.S. law enforcement, and the Argentine police. The successful capture demonstrated the dedication and collaboration of the authorities involved. And number 6, Michelle Jinx Genist. In the early 1980s, the Hells Angels faced issues with their North chapter in Laval due to drug use and unpredictable behavior. Rumors of debts owed to rival gang leader Frank Peter Dooney Ryan sparked a deadly chain of events. A meeting was called at the Lennoxville clubhouse intended to discipline the Laval chapter members. Jinx, a ruthless and unpredictable figure within the Hells Angels, became involved in internal power struggles as tensions escalated. On that fateful day, 5 Laval chapter members walked into a trap at the Lennoxville clubhouse, where over 40 Hells Angels brutally beat and shot them. The victims' bodies were then disposed of in the St. Lawrence River. Police investigations revealed the truth behind the massacre with the help of informants Yves Trudeau and Jerry Coulombe. The subsequent trial exposed shocking revelations, including a bribery attempt that reached the jury. Michael Jinx Genist, a member of the Hells Angels, played a significant role in the violent events of the Lennoxville massacre. He orchestrated the beatings, shootings, and disposal of the victims. In the weeks that followed, Jinx also brutally murdered Claude Roy, a Laval chapter prospect. Though justice eventually caught up with Jinx, his dark legacy remains intertwined with the tragic events of the Lennoxville massacre. Number 5. Frank Hainbuth. The towering figure at 6'5" with a shaved head and a neatly trimmed beard is the influential president of the Hanover chapter of the Hells Angels in Germany. He rose to power from a middle-class background and made his mark in Hanover's red light district, expanding his influence to other cities. Legal issues, including a prison sentence, did not deter him, and he focused on managing establishments in the Steintor district and establishing the Hells Angels as doormen. Hainbuth's close relationship with lawyer Götz von Fromberg, who had connections to the German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder, played a crucial role in his success. Known as the Peacemaker, Hainbuth resolved conflicts in the Steintor district and mediated negotiations with the arch-rivals of the Hells Angels, the Bandidos M.C. However, he faced accusations of ordering a murder, although no evidence was presented. He relocated to Mallorca, Spain in 2012, but was arrested in 2013, accused of forming a criminal organization and committing various crimes as the regional leader of the Hells Angels on the island. Charges included drug trafficking, pimping, extortion, threats, and money laundering. Frank Hainbuth may not be the most deadly killer on this list, but his leadership style undeniably had a profound impact on the Hells Angels. His leadership style left a lasting impact on the Hells Angels, resulting in a prosperous business and a certain level of societal acceptance and prominence in Europe. Number 4. David McDonald Carroll, known as Wolf, was a notorious Canadian outlaw biker and gangster associated with the Hells Angels. Starting with the 13th Tri Biker Gang in Halifax, Carroll gained the trust of the Montreal Hells Angels and eventually became the president of Atlantic Canada's first Hells Angels chapter. He established a reputation as a reliable hitman and right-hand man to a prominent Hells Angels member. Carroll's involvement in a prostitution ring led to his imprisonment in the mid-1980s. However, his most notorious connection was to the Lennoxville massacre, where he faced murder charges but was acquitted. He proudly displayed the Hells Angels' Filthy Few patch, indicating his involvement in a committed murder, and was an active participant in the Quebec Biker War. Engaging in cocaine trafficking and owning bars and nightclubs, Carroll wielded significant influence within the Hells Angels and formed partnerships with the Rizzuto family, an Italian mafia clan. In 2001, he disappeared upon learning of an impending major arrest operation, and authorities have been searching for him ever since. Allegedly, the Wolf sought refuge in Mexico at the time of the planned arrest, eventually fleeing to Brazil. Authorities also speculate that he possessed a substantial sum of up to $1 million in cash. Not the worst conditions to disappear, eh? There have been reported sightings of Carroll in Australia and the Dominican Republic, suggesting his continued involvement in criminal activities. Evading imprisonment for decades, Carroll, now 71 years old, remains an elusive figure. Is he savoring a life of obscurity somewhere amidst the idyllic West Indies? Or is it secretly still hunting for more victims, undetected by the authorities? But now it's time to look at the real tough guys. The top 3 most dangerous and notorious Hells Angels of all time. Number 3. Walterstadnik, born on August 3, 1952, in Hamilton, Ontario, defied expectations with his unassuming appearance and physical scars from a motorcycle accident. However, beneath his inconspicuous facade, he possessed intelligence, determination, and a visionary outlook that would reshape the criminal underworld. Stadnik emerged as one of Canada's most pivotal organized crime figures, leaving an indelible mark on the nation's history. In October 1978, Stadnik found himself in Montreal, meeting with Yves Buteau and other Hells Angels leaders to discuss a patchover for his own club, the Wild Ones, to the bigger Hells Angels. Little did he know that his trip would thrust him into a life-or-death situation. During what would become known as the Le Tourbillon Massacre, members of the Outlaws M.C. stormed the bar, targeting the Angels and Wild Ones in attendance. Amidst the chaos, Stadnik, scarred by the experience of the table turning into a battlefield, managed to survive by hiding beneath its shelter. In the aftermath, the man who had hired the American outlaws responsible for the bloodshed, Roland Roxy du Temple, was swiftly dealt with by the Hells Angels' ace assassin. As Stadnik's influence grew, law enforcement agencies took notice. He became national president of the Hells Angels, expanding their reach across Ontario, Manitoba, and British Columbia. Under his leadership, they transformed into a formidable national criminal organization. This sparked the First Canadian Biker War, escalating violence and instilling fear in communities. The Hells Angels unleashed a reign of terror, leaving innocent bystanders and businesses as collateral damage. Stadnik faced threats not only from rival gangs but also from Scott Steinert, the president of America's Hells Angels, who aimed to claim the Canadian presidency. Steinert's plan went awry, and he was found dead in the St. Lawrence River with a crushed skull. In 1984, Stadnik's life took a tragic turn when a traffic incident left him with extensive burns and disfigurement. During his vulnerable state in the hospital, he was guarded by members of the 13th Tribe Biker Gang and police officers, an unusual sight in Canada at the time. Stadnik survived the accident, but later faced charges related to gangsterism and was sent to jail. Unlike Stadnik, the next Hells Angel makes no secret of his bloodthirsty nature. The man who went down in history as the worst serial killer in Canadian history. Number 2, Yves Apache Trudeau, nicknamed Apache and the Mad Bumper, was born in 1946 and a Canadian career criminal whose life unfolded in a tapestry of violence and redemption. Trudeau began his journey in the 1960s, employed by the chemical company Canadian Industries Limited. However, his true calling lay elsewhere. He founded a motorcycle club called the Popeyes, which soon grew to become one of the largest clubs in the country, establishing connections with the Canadian Mafia. In 1977, the Poppies received an offer to become an official charter of the notorious Hells Angels. Thus, the North Chapter was born, marking the first ever charter formation in Canada and the 31st charter worldwide. As the 1970s progressed, Trudeau developed a chilling inclination towards mercilessness. His first murder took place when he encountered a thief who had stolen a Popeyes motorcycle. In front of his gang, Trudeau coldly executed the man, setting a dark precedent for the years to come. He swiftly transitioned into a contract killer, catering to Montreal's criminal underworld and the Hells Angels. The North Chapter of the Hells Angels fell into disfavor in the 1980s due to allegations of insufficiently sharing its drug profits with other charters. On March 24, 1984, tragedy struck in the form of the Lennoxville Massacre, during which a significant portion of the charter was wiped out. Trudeau, by a stroke of fate, survived because he happened to be in a detoxification clinic at the time of the execution. Gripped by fear of retaliation, he made a fateful decision. He became a police informant. In the course of this cooperation, Trudeau confessed to committing 43 murders throughout the 1970s and 1980s. His revelations led to lengthy prison sentences for 43 other Hells Angels members. Trudeau himself was sentenced to life imprisonment, but through his informant agreement, he received a reduced sentence and was released on parole in 1994, assuming a new identity under the Witness Protection Program. Following his release, Trudeau sought to rebuild his life, taking on various jobs. However, by 2000, he found himself dependent on welfare and unemployment benefits for sustenance. In 2004, tragedy struck again as Trudeau was rearrested and pleaded guilty to sexually abusing a 13-year-old boy in 6 separate incidents spanning 4 years. He was sentenced to an additional 4 years in prison. From 2006 to 2007, Trudeau underwent a sexual offender program, during which his diagnosis of cancer was revealed. To ensure adequate medical care, he was transferred to Archambault Penitentiary in Saint-Anne-des-Plaines. In 2008, Trudeau was released from custody, gravely ill, to spend his final days as a free man. Yves Trudeau, with his staggering tally of 43 murders, remains one of the most dangerous figures in Canada's biker scene. A judge once remarked that Trudeau had taken more lives than the entire Canadian Army during the Second Gulf War. Only Gerald Gallant, another Canadian contract killer, comes close, having claimed 27 lives during the biker war in the province of Quebec. A man whom we have now often teasingly mentioned in this story now makes his appearance. A man who combines the strategic competence of Walterstadnik with the brutality and ruthlessness of Yves Trudeau. Number 1. Maurice "Mom" Boucher, the embodiment of all evil in the biker world. Born on June 21, 1953, Boucher was no ordinary man. He became a Canadian gangster, convicted murderer, reputed drug trafficker, and an outlaw biker. But above all, he was the president of the Hells Angels Quebec Nomads chapter, leading them through dark and violent times. Throughout his criminal career, Maurice Boucher was a larger-than-life figure. Known for his physical strength, fearlessness, and charisma, he earned the nickname Mom for his attention to detail and thoroughness in managing his men. During the late 1990s and early 2000s, Quebec was embroiled in a ferocious conflict known as the Quebec Biker War. It was a battle for power and control between 2 rival biker gangs, the Hells Angels and the rock machine MC. Maurice Boucher emerged as the charismatic leader of the Hells Angels, leading them into a brutal and deadly war against their adversaries. Boucher led his gang of bikers like a warlord and used Yves "Apache" Trudeau as his right hand to land precise and deadly blows against the club's enemies. But it was not only the top killer who was used. He also founded the Rockers, a puppet club of the Hells Angels responsible for numerous murders during the Quebec Biker War. He seemed to know exactly how to manipulate the right people to avoid getting his own fingers dirty. Not only did Boucher leave a trail of crime and bloodshed, but his own family became entangled in organized crime. His son, Francis Boucher, followed in his father's footsteps, engaging in racist activism and joining groups like White Power Canada and the Quebec Ku Klux Klan. One of Boucher's notable adversaries was Commander André Bouchard, who headed the Major Crimes Unit. Stopping Boucher proved more difficult than expected. His cunning system of letting others do the dirty work meant he could not be proven guilty in the first trial. Some also suspect that intimidation of judges and juries played a role. Who would be able to impose a sentence on such a powerful man without having to pay for it? Boucher had connections with the mafia, particularly with Reynold Desjardins, a trusted associate of Vito Rizzuto, the leader of the Rizzuto crime family. Together, they were involved in a drug smuggling operation, trafficking cocaine from Jamaica to Canada. In the eyes of the public, Maurice Boucher was a notorious figure who garnered both fear and admiration. His fellow Hells Angels demonstrated their loyalty by carrying him out of the courtroom on their shoulders after his acquittal. He even achieved a level of folk hero status, receiving cheers from the crowd at a boxing match and people lining up for his autograph. But fate catches even the most cunning crook at some point. In 2002, he was convicted of ordering the murders of 2 Quebec prison officers, a calculated move to destabilize the Quebec justice system. As a result, he was sentenced to serve 3 life sentences in Canada's only supermax prison, a place reserved for the most dangerous criminals. Even behind bars, Boucher's infamy haunted him. He survived several assassination attempts, as those seeking revenge targeted him for his past crimes. To protect him, the authorities isolated him in a special unit within the prison. However, his health began to deteriorate due to metastatic throat cancer. In a secret operation, he was transferred to the Archambault Institution in June 2022 to receive palliative care, where he eventually passed away on July 10, 2022. Maurice "Mom" Boucher's story is one of violence, power, and the relentless pursuit of control. He led the Hells Angels through the treacherous Quebec Biker War, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. Although he was ultimately brought to justice and faced the consequences of his actions, his impact on Quebec's criminal history remains indelible.